Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about strength standards and how to use a lot of these strength standard charts. And these are easy to find. If you just go to Google and type in strength standards, you'll be able to pull up websites like one of the big exercise sites, which is a strength and conditioning site. They'll be right there available within the first couple of searches on a search engine. So a lot of times I've had people ask me about different strength standards, and we have my Big Five strength standard, but that is a very, very specific strength standard that I almost feel like I could completely change in certain ways. And that was for a specific outcome, right? There was a specific thing involved with it of what we were trying to achieve with it. And it's not really my standard. It's just telling you that if you have this strength on all these lifts, you're going to look like you lift and be relatively big top to bottom when the average person sees you. Well, the problem with that is that I'll get women, for one, who come in and ask, and then I get people who say, well, that's a pretty big standard. You know, where do I fit way before? How do I get there? What are the different steps? And why is it not based on body weight and etc.? And the whole point here is that women generally don't want to look really jacked top to bottom. Right? So it's like I don't have a separate strength standard for that for women because they don't fit that bill. In other words, the average woman is not going to walk down the street in a t-shirt and a pair of shorts and you're going to think, wow, that chick is jacked. She is cock diesel as hell with her just walking down the street mostly clothed. Drug-free, right? That's not going to happen. So, I mean, the strength standard would basically be the same. I mean, a woman should probably be able to deadlift 500 pounds and bench close to 300 if she wants people to see her walking down the street and think she is really jacked, while 2/3 of her is covered up, like in clothing. Okay, so you understand that there's not going to be a standard for that for women. But these strength and conditioning charts in general are very, very useful. And women can use these to assess things. Now, notice that they're broken up by body weight. And here's the problem I do see where people misuse these. And I see the biggest problem is with tall guys trying to use these sheets wrong. Because a lot of times tall guys will get caught up in this and they'll say, well, I weigh, you know, if they're 6'3" and they're like, I weigh 181 pounds. So looking at this bench press to be advanced, I need to bench 275. And then all of a sudden, as they're trying to train and everything, they can't stay 181 pounds and hit these numbers. In other words, a guy who's that tall, he can't be 181 pounds. Okay, and a guy who's 6'4", what they don't realize is that even 198, maybe even 220 is not the appropriate weight for them. Because again, that free mass index, they start looking at this stuff and say, oh, well, if a guy only gains 20 pounds of muscle, no, at 6'4", you're going to gain way more than 20 pounds of muscle if you reach even a 24 fat-free mass index, right? You're not going to only gain 20 pounds of muscle. Like, realistically, a guy who's 6'2", 6'3", 6'4", to have a 24 fat-free mass index, and we oftentimes say 25 is about the upper threshold for someone with really good genetics who's natural for total muscle mass, right? The genetically average guy might not even get to 25, but even 24, and they start plugging the numbers in, it's like, you really think you're going to be 200 pounds? So even if you're 181 and you've been lifting for a couple of years and you're that tall, do you really think another 20 pounds is going to put you near your natural limit? So you're not going to stay 181. You're not even going to be in the 198. And even at 220, a guy who's above 6 foot, to be 220 and near his natural limit, he would have to be shredded. He's not going to walk around at a healthy athletic body fat. He's not going to be 13% body fat. Because that guy might end up being 230, 240. Okay, so perspectives. If you're a big, strong guy, is this going to all scale relative to your height? So that's the issue we have when we look at some of these charts. And so women aren't going to gain as much total muscle mass, but then they're going to have more body fat. So they might look at that. If you're a woman who weighs 148, you look at those deadlift charts and kind of see where you stack up. Men have their own separate charts. For men, the same thing. You can look through here and see how they are. Don't worry about the untrained chart, because that's just an average of what coaches notice with untrained people. And these charts come from athletes, where people will also kind of make the mistake is like, well, I'm a novice on these lifts, but I'm advanced on the bench press. That's always the one that people will hit. And it's like, well, yeah, except that if you trained your whole body, you're going to be in the next weight class up. So it's like, because you don't actually train your back and legs, which are most of the muscle in your body, you're probably 15 pounds underweight still. Okay, so those guys will end up with a really good bench press. But this is for athletes. These are for people who assume that you're training most of your body, that you are active. So that's where these charts come from. Okay, and a good baseline, usually what you want to see for a lot of field athletes and stuff, they want to get them to that intermediate level at least. Okay, for someone who's going to play field sports like all these lifts, and I took out the snatch and the clean because most people don't do those, even lifters. But those are in these charts too. So I stuck with just the big four, right? The big four. But, you know, realistically, they want to get to at least the intermediate. For a lot of people, I would say, they're like, well, where should I try to get? Aim for the advanced. Okay? Look at the advanced chart, but you need to be honest in assessing your body fat and assessing your muscle mass. Okay? You need to be looking at that, because a lot of times, like, let's say, you know, as a woman, for example, if you're a fairly new lifter and you're 123, well, you're going to put on 10 pounds of muscle. Okay, if you're actually training and you want to get stronger. So you're not going to stay in the 123 unless you're relatively short or you get really, really, really lean. Okay, so a lot of times as a woman, you're going to end up in the 132. You might end up into the 140s and have to use the 148 chart. So when you look at these lifts, you need to factor in the fact that you're going to gain weight. Okay. And people say, well, what if I don't want to gain a bunch of weight? Can I still get really strong? Muscle mass is where you get your strength. And that needs to be made very, 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 very clear. The research on this shows that other factors, non-physical structure factors, only account for about 10% of your total 1 rep max strength. Okay? People understand that? They can do DEXA scans now and tell you what your max squat is within 10% based upon a DEXA scan. Muscle mass relative to limb lengths and height actually determines within 90% of what your maxes are on a lot of big lifts. Deadlift is the odd man out. Deadlift is a totally different beast. It doesn't follow these same rules. But there's reasons for that. So if you're not at a higher body fat, okay, like if you're still a fairly novice lifter, reasonably novice, you've only been training 6 months of real training, and you say, well, I don't want to go up 2 whole weight classes, which is what you might have to do. It's like, well, are you lean or are you fat right now? Because to reach your maximum muscle potential, which is the only way you're going to ever hit those elite numbers on the right column, by the way, right? The elite column assumes that you have probably reached nearly your maximum muscle potential. In other words, you're not going to hit elite on multiple of these lifts. Okay, you might get it on one of them. You're not going to get elite across the charts unless you've probably reached a 24 or higher fat-free mass index. Okay, so you need to go plug that in. Plug those into a calculator and, you know, be honest with yourself about your body fat. Plug these into a chart and figure out what your ideal body weight would be for your height. Right? You need to know what it would be for your height at the sort of body fat that you're aiming for. When you plug those into a calculator, some guys might find they might need to weigh a lot more or a lot less than they think they do. But usually guys I find who are well under 200 pounds, guys who are like 160 or something, and if you're 5'9", 5'8", 5'10", anything in that average height range, and you're 160, you're not going to get to the far right side of the chart at that body weight. Okay, because you would have to be shredded to even be, you know, something like 170 pounds and reach anywhere near your maximum muscle potential. And you may not want to do that. It's not ideal to do that. It's not good for you to do that. So if you're going to be at a healthier body fat, people need to go plug in and be honest about their height. Most guys don't actually know their height, by the way. They've never actually measured it. I found that the average guy adds 2 to 3 inches. They don't know what their height actually is. without shoes on. So go if you know that, go plug it into the fat-free mass index and start kind of figuring out what is a realistic expectation of how much muscle your frame will hold. Okay, because that's going to matter for these charts on the body weight. So that's the biggest problem I see, is that people who still need to gain another 15 plus pounds of muscle, they use the chart where they are right now, right? The weight, and then it's like, man, I've got to add this. Oh my God, that's a long way to go to get too advanced. And it's like, yeah, it is, but you're going to have to gain weight and muscle anyways. You're going to have to put on a lot of muscle to get to that. So you probably are looking at the wrong chart to begin with. You know, if you're at 165 now, you might need to be at the 181 or higher to be strong enough to hit those. So you look at those advanced, and I would say to most guys, the advanced should be your baseline that the majority of you out there aim for. The elite represents strength specialization. Okay, the elite chart assumes that you are very dedicated to specialized strength training and you care a lot about your maxes. The advanced is where you should be if you do some, fair amount of heavy lifting, but you've peaked out your muscle mass. Like you've gained the vast majority of the muscle that you're going to gain completely clean. You've gained 95% of it for your lifetime. Okay, that's usually what it assumes. But the elite represents when you really get serious about strength as a major endeavor. All right, guys, well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.